Ccbm results and presentation. So let me just grab that and share that with you. And let me go into present mode here. Hopefully you can all see that. Yes, okay, great. So as we do every year, we are gathering information on our students as they return to school from a relaxing, fun summer. We do administer the Ccbm as a standardized assessment, but we also have other information that we collect on our students that we have been doing for a while that also gives us additional information. So this isn't the only source of information we use as we look at our students. So I just wanted to share, this is a rundown of the components of the Ccbm, what it includes in its score report. And the way that we use this is a universal screener. So we're looking for information about students and how they're coming into different grade levels and the level of preparedness that they have in basic literacy, as well as some foundational math skills. So it's broken up into some sub-scores and some subcategories. And the way the test is designed is that it flags groups of students that fall beneath the 25th percentile in a yellow or a red zone. And that's dictated on where they fall in different cut scores on that universal screen. So this is just an overview of students that were tested and the students that fell beneath the 25th percentile. So important to note on this is that the norms, the fall norms, are 1 minute tests in large part, especially for K and 1. So the tests, each of these administrations are little snippets of assessments. They're given in 1 minute. Letter naming is a category that you see LN in kindergarten. That's a mix of upper and lowercase letters. Letter sounds is upper and lowercase letters that are students are asked to give the sounds for those letters, as well as letter pairs or digraphs. Letter sounds are also corrected in 1 minute, and they're researched based on the most frequent sounds in the beginning of the list, and then they go to more complex ones. Phonemic awareness, the student identifies individual phonemes presented orally in a minute. So I wanted to give you that information. When you look at these bars, you'll definitely notice that kindergarten and first grade have a little bit more flagging than the other grade levels. The cut scores are really important to understand in the beginning of this assessment. So, fall cut scores are different numbers of items correct than in the winter, than in the spring. So, for example, kindergarten students who identify 2 to 6 letters, less than 7, will identify with the yellow flag, where students who meet the threshold of red, or that little sliver of red where letter naming is, those students could only identify 1 to 2 letters, or 0 to 1 letters, sorry, in red. So basically, if a student didn't recognize, say, the letters in their name coming into kindergarten, they're going to flag. For an example, but any other student wouldn't necessarily know all of the letters of the alphabet or recognize them, and that's nationally normed as normal. For letter sounds, you'll see some yellow, no red, and that's because any child who is 0 or 1 is in yellow. Anything above 1 letter sound is not indicated, it's in that white bar. And phonemic awareness, you see, has no flags, and that's because 0 is the baseline expectation in the fall. To identify none is what they're looking for in the fall of kindergarten in the national norms. So I hope that gives some perspective as you're looking at these fall scores. So what we did this time is we thought it would be important for us to look not only at the students and where they're falling, but also look at last year where students entered into school and to really put that into some context. So, when you look at a grade K performance comparison on the Ccbm, you'll see in 2021, we screened the kids when they came back to school, but they missed 60 days of pre-K education. That would be at the tail end, that last trimester of the year, as well as summertime. Our pre-Ks were by and large not open during that first beginning part of the pandemic. And then if you look at on the right-hand side, this year's scores, it was a COVID year of pre-K for those students if they went to pre-K. And I think that's really remarkable and an important thing to note, because the importance of pre-K education has been well documented, that kids who have that advantage definitely have stronger social skills, stronger academics, better listening skills when they come into school. And that certainly is what our data is showing us. In addition, I put a little comment up there. It was really unusual for us in Madison to greet 18 students who come from dual language households in our kindergarten class, which is wonderful. I love to see that dual language household ability coming into our system. Out of that those 18 students who were screened for EL services, English language services, 8 of those students qualified. This year, in addition to this data in kindergarten, we also decided to give a language assessment to all students. It's called the BAME. We've given the BAME in the past, and we've also given it as a diagnostic test. But what the BAME does is it also screens kids for basic concepts, over, under, in between, some quantity concepts, least, most, things like that. And in prior years, we haven't had that many kindergarten students flag in the BAME. This year, we had 13 students flag in the BAME. We had 2 at the 25th percentile. And then we also looked at the 25th to 50th percentile. We had 11 students flag under the 50th percentile in our schools in the BAME. So that's really important because we want that oral language development to be very strong in kindergarten so they can access all of their learning activities. We also administer other assessments in kindergarten outside of this, but I thought that those pieces might be helpful for the committee to understand. At the 50th percentile, just to give you some context compared to the last slide, for students to score at the 50th percentile in letter names, they need 42 correct. Now remember, that's a mix of upper and lowercase letters. That's why it's 42. Letter sounds is 23, and phonemic segmentation is 26. I'm gonna move on to the next slide. So here you see our first graders. Again, noting kind of the impact of COVID educational circumstances for them. The grade 1 students on the left-hand chart missed 60 days of kindergarten, the last 60 days of kindergarten. I really think that the letter sounds scores really reflects that, a lot of that refinement, as well as some of the other areas that we see in our in-house assessment. If you look on the right-hand side, that's this year's scores. The kids missed 60 days of pre-K. And we also started our foundations program from Wilson in January with this particular cohort of students. So they did have that foundational work start. It actually started a little bit before January, but I would say the official launch date was January. From here, you can take a look at our second graders and our second grade students. And you'll see, typically as everybody in this committee is aware, we're looking for that 50th percentile. We'd like to see a good strong 75% at the 50th percentile. So we still have a little bit of work to do in passage reading fluency. The kids came in at 69%. They had a full year of grade 1 foundations. So they had that full program in its entirety. The teachers trained during the summer, so they were ready to launch. But those kiddos in 2nd grade also missed 60 days of kindergarten. I think the trends that we see in this data so far is, of course, the impact K1 and 2 on some of the work that we hope to build upon in future years. The good news is when you look at grade 3, is you're starting to track that 50th percentile across, and the scores are really strong. They're where we'd like to see them. They had a full year of grade 2 foundations on the right-hand side. So they did have that full program as well. So we're starting to see some really strong academics going forth. 4th and 5th grade, very few students who are flagging at the 25th percentile. When you take a look at that 4th grade class now, you're seeing that at the 50th percentile, you're hitting at the 70% or over of our students that are hitting those benchmarks. Again, I tried to make notations up at the top about the implementation of foundations. You'll see in that 4th grade group, they had grade 2 foundations last year. They're having grade 3 this year. And the reason for that is the language and the methodology in foundations is really specific. And students really need to get the routines in order to get the full benefit of the program. And since we started foundations last year, it was their recommendation for us to stagger the implementation this year. But we want to make sure that the 4th graders still get the full program up through the 3rd grade program this year. So our teachers are trained in 4th grade and are using the foundations program. And here you see our 5th graders, again, doing really well. Our teachers have worked hard to make sure that kids are maintaining grade level performance. So here's 6 through 8. Again, you see very little yellow, very little red. And again, you're seeing, really strong representation at the 50th percentile this year. In grade 6, in grade 7, and in grade 8. So overall, when we take a look at our K through 8 scores and we look at where we see some high risk and where we see some risk on this nationally normed indicator, there's definitely more flagging in mathematics as kids get older and the content builds upon itself. And you look at English language arts and you see more flagging on the younger levels where the foundational skills are being built. So I hope that gives everybody a good overview of where we are with that indicator. I'm just gonna stop my share and take any questions that you might have.
I could start if you want, Diane. Just a couple, and I'll preface all this by saying that what I'm going to focus in on here, probably unsurprisingly, is the 50th percentile, because I think that that's a pretty important threshold, as I've described previously, and the subtests that are related to phonemic awareness and fluency in particular, as I go through here. So, and I'll try and have that make sense as I go through. The first thing I want to say is, it's obvious that there's a lot of work happening here, and it seems fantastic. I look at grade 3, and grade 3 at the 50th percentile, like you described, is I think where any school like Madison, school district like Madison and both the schools would want to be, with everything hovering around 80%. So you see that the 50th percentile for passage reading fluency for grade 3, which had that full year grade 2 foundations, which I know is a big boost, is at 78%. And that 80% threshold for these subtests in particular, and again, why I focus on that is because these have been the relative weaknesses over time that we've seen for the schools and the grades. This is a fantastic demonstration of growth, in my opinion. And I mean that not in the clinical way. I mean growth in terms of the work in the district, and growth in terms of the individual students figuring out or learning what they need to learn, and growing like we're hoping for. That work, is evidenced as well if you look at grade 4, and I want to also highlight the teachers here, as well as the administration, who are working on things that they might not normally work on. You look at grade 4 that had, when they were in grade 3, grade 2 foundations, and now grade 3 foundations in grade 4, and working on a lot of things that are in addition to all the other responsibilities that they have. So I think that's pretty huge for the district, and appreciated. So I wonder about, when we look back at grade 1 in particular, and I'll just pick that one out as the one that's most concerning. You see phoneme segmentation, the PS there. If you're following the pages on grade 1, the 50th percentile is 39%. So, a pretty stark difference between that and what you're seeing for some later grades for PRF. So, my main question, I just want to say, I think that there's a lot of work happening here. Foundations is obviously really working well. And it seems to me to be a pretty big change from what's happened in the district previously. What's the plan for a cohort like the grade 1, who had the unfortunate, kindergarten COVID year and pre-K too, and is, struggling, and that might trend upward through the grades as they move on?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So I think everybody's aware that we added another intervention teacher at the elementary schools. That teacher is actually serving students in classrooms a great deal in those lower grades, really kind of boosting our tier 1 instruction, as well as tier 2 and tier 3. So we're really looking at how to identify quickly what various small groups of students might need, how much they need, and then filling whatever gaps that we're seeing. And we also have had our data teams meet regularly. Becky's here and probably can elaborate on that. There's tons of goals, tier 1 goals, tier 2 goals, plans going forth of how we're going to try to shore up their foundation. Also during the summertime, right at the end of the school year, we met for several days with Ben Powers, and we went through the sequence of foundations, and we really analyzed where the sequence was, probably spending a lot of time that we could actually utilize in order to look at our assessment results and help kids to progress through that sequence. And you'll also note that this particular group, that grade 1 group, had half of the year starting with foundations. The interesting part about that is that in kindergarten, the foundations program really deals with letter naming for 5 beginning months of that program, which probably was a significant amount of time for our population. So Ben really encourages us to take a look at our data and really respond to our data accordingly. But of course, we're still implementing the foundations program, as well as all of the teaching skills that they've had in terms of training with Wilson. Becky, do you want to add anything to that in terms of anything that I've missed that?
Sure, I'd be happy to add to just some more details of the plan. Just backing up a step though, just to keep in mind, because when I see as a building principal, 39% for phoneme segmentation in first grade, that's a red flag for me as well. This was a 1-minute probe, as Gail mentioned. Also, you should know that these assessments, we do them in a flooding model. So to assess 500 elementary students at the K-3 level in a matter of 2 weeks, we use an all hands on deck approach. So our special education teachers, our interventionists, our coaches, our classroom teachers, all kind of descend on one classroom and give these assessments. So sometimes kids are doing them with teachers that they really haven't met. And as sweet and as lovely as everybody is, it's just another thing to take into consideration. In addition to the extra interventionists at our school this year, we also added an extra classroom section. And for me personally at Jeffrey, that classroom section went to first grade to keep our class sizes low. So my first grades are currently 15, which is wonderful. My interventionist is starting to push into classrooms. We looked at all of the data, all of our data points on our October 11th data teams. And specifically, we are having our interventionists work with 2 classrooms where we identified the most need. So they'll be doing a 6-week rotation in there. And we identified our students that are reading at a level D. They ended kindergarten at a level C. We want them kind of very quickly in first grade, moving through the levels, moving into those F's and G's. So the kids that are staying stagnant at the level D, those are the kids that we are supporting right now with the interventionists. We also have tier 1 goals for phoneme segmentation started for any kids who flagged, and not just at the 25th percentile, but at the 50th percentile. So between small class sizes, interventionists, really targeted tiered instruction, we're hoping to see a lot of improvement with those scores for the winter.
Yeah, thanks both. That's helpful. The nice thing about the 39% related to what you said, Becky, is that, even if the 1 minute assessment is not reflective of what a student can do, it still flags that student, right? And so you're able, it sounds like there are a lot of resources in place to then follow up and see what needs to be done, which is encouraging. The thing I'll put out there, and this isn't really a question, just a statement, and I'll leave it at that, is that we, having done this for a couple of years now, and having had these conversations as a board for a couple of years now, we all know that the winter dip is coming in terms of what the scores look like for the Ccbm. And so I would encourage everybody, just to continue the conversation, especially about this cohort in particular, to some extent kindergarten, although, kindergarten first screener is, it's early. Mm-hmm. So I hope that conversation continues, because if that's still at 39 in the winter, or if it's below that, as we've sometimes seen in previous years, that's maybe time to start talking about resources and other things that can happen for this cohort of students in particular. But thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to speak to that, Greg, I'm looking at the norms right now. And for students to hit that 50th percentile in first grade, they have a score of 54 correct in that 1 minute period. And that goes to 66 in the winter. So it is significant. However, when you look at the spring, winter to spring, it levels off at 67. So, the kids only have one item difference between the spring and the winter scores. So certainly, that gives us some time to meet that threshold as well.
One of the questions I had was regarding, so we were looking at when school started this fall, we were thinking that we would have a lot of kindergartners or first graders that were going to start that perhaps were either homeschooled or were held back. And so I wanted to know, did that impact these numbers at all? Like, how many did we actually see come in that were not part of our district before?
Yeah, well, in kindergarten, it's all of them, right? Because they're all in pre-K. But I can tell you, I was in conversations a lot with pre-Ks during COVID because I was acting as the liaison on the town side. Their model was extremely disrupted. They had elderly staff that wasn't able to work. They had to break up their student groups, of course, a lot differently than they would have before. And they did have periods where they had to close and quarantine. So for pre-K, it was significant. I do believe some pre-Ks struggled in their business as well. And that does have impact, maintaining healthy pre-K populations is really important to school success. For our kindergartners, we did have a significant group of kindergarten, and I don't have the data point in front of me, but I think I reported it before to the board. I can't think of it off of the top of my head. I'll look for it. But certainly some of those kids are represented here. But I don't know the number right off I want to say 13, but I'm not sure, Diane.
That sounds familiar. Actually.
Does it?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, our recall's in the same area.
So did any kids start, like they didn't go to kindergarten last year because of the pandemic, and then they just came into first grade? So would we be seeing a reflection there as well?
Yeah.
Yes, I have a couple of first graders that were either went to a private school for kindergarten, or I have a couple that were did a homeschool program. So that's definitely a factor. The other thing is we just had so many new students move in. I had probably 35 new students in 1, 2, and 3 at Jeffrey School. And so those are kids that are coming from other states, other districts in Connecticut that may or may not have foundations. So there's that catch up sort of period where they're just learning, foundations has a lot of lingo in it. There's a lot of, marking and really, really high level things that the kids are doing. So we're catching those kids up a little bit to speed as well.
I think another important piece to note is that we weren't retaining kids in kindergarten based on the impact of COVID or the conditions that they were learning in. There's a lot of research that says that retention is not good for kids. And we really felt that we had the resources and the ability to progress them into first grade despite that disruption in kindergarten. So we maintain that for our kids.
I had another question, but I lost it. Give me a minute. Kathy, do you have anything?
Just a few comments. I think I'm really impressed with the way that you layer. You don't just look at data and react. You take a lot of factors into play. And I think that that's such a level-headed, smart way to go about thinking about intervention, and not just intervention, but also just how we approach tier 1. You don't just take raw data. You really, you think about class size, which is hugely important. The fact that you have 15s, you made a smaller class sizes, Becky, in your school, and did 15 students in first grade, which is, first grade is so just, it's the everything year. And to know that, and to have a deeper understanding of the research, and like those decisions aren't just like little decisions, they're major decisions. And it's not lost on me. And I just want to say that, how you think about, even just the way that you were talking about how you assessed using that flooding model. We call it blitzing, but the same idea, so that you don't interrupt instruction, but that you really understand that you really just need a nugget of information to be able to make the next step decisions. This type of data-driven decision-making, taking so many factors that aren't just numbers, is just so impressive, and I really appreciate it. And I just want you to know that. Our kids are really, really lucky.
Thank you.
I think that it really is showing, how well implemented Foundations has, and how well the kids are doing on it. And I think it's, kudos to the teachers and the administration for really digging deep and getting the kids in the program, and especially with grade 3, the numbers improving so much. It looks, it's definitely the direction we want to go. So my question that I remembered was, So last year, you did the all hands on deck, and you pulled interventionists from everywhere to really get the younger kids going. So I know we hired that extra interventionist, but if are you prepared to do a similar thing if you find that you need more intervention work done, if more kids are flagging, or if you feel like you need more smaller groups, to
Yeah.
help them along?
So we had the coaches, you're referring to the coaches, our literacy coaches. We pulled them from all levels of the system down into the primary levels, and we had them deliver tier 1 instruction, tier 2 instruction. And also we had kids remotely that were receiving tiered intervention too. So we actually were working in this platform, providing intervention on a regular basis with our coaches. That was kind of their intervention class. And that was, of course, specific to classrooms and grade levels. It was a little tough haul. This year, fortunately, we don't have any kids remotely. So that helps us. We're able to get our hands on them. We also don't have a truncated school day. We don't have this huge parent drop off and this, early dismissal. So we have time back. And in addition to that resource, so we put our coaches back into their assignments. So they're back where they go. So we do have coaches dedicated to kindergarten, first grade, and second grade and third grade. They're all back. So now the teaching and that support for teachers to continually look at where their students are and reflect that in their instruction and go deeply into that practice. I mean, we talked about foundations. We were training teachers in foundations virtually with no coaches next to them. So, this is a first year implementation that we've done, but now we need to deepen that and we need to go further with that. So our coaches being in the classrooms with teachers is actually going to help boost it. To answer your questions, if things like are a mess, Becky and Kelly are going to be the first ones screaming, going, we need more help, we need more resources. But we've also done a fairly good job at training our paraprofessionals, despite the conditions, to also be pulling together some groups and some work that they can do as well. So I feel like we're kind of thinking of everything, and we've been trying to think that way since before the school year started last year, of what would be best for kids. How can we provide the most PD we can for our teachers, but still have them face-to-face with kids? So one of the other pieces, and Greg, I think you mentioned fluency. We've been doing a lot of professional research and work on fluency. I was able to secure a training in March, our next PD day, with Tim Rozinski, who is well known for his work on fluency and fluency rubrics. And Kathy wants to come. Yeah, so that was fortunate. We did a lot of reaching out to different gurus in that area. Had some disappointments from Timothy Shanahan. He doesn't do that level of work, but he did, of course.
I think that's okay. You're better off with Tim Rozinski.
I think he cites his work in some of his presentations. So we're excited about that, but the coaches are also doing work with fluency based on some articles that Timothy Shanahan has written, as well as some of the PD that he has out there. So we're still moving ahead, but we're moving at all parts of the system now. And continuing with morphology work, which has gone over really well. So the teachers are excited about that too.
I just want to say one other thing, well, actually two things. The first thing is, Diane, your question about, interventionists and resources. And it's important that we remember all of that when we go and sit down for those budget workshops. We look at the price tag on some of those things, like coaches, and those are higher level and higher paying positions. And I think it's important for us to keep that in mind, that a lot of this, or a lion's share of this, is really about those human resources, and they cost money. And we have to remember that if this group of people are coming in front of us to talk to us about the fact that they need that. We have to recall this impressive data, and also this deeply, this data-driven decision making that's being done by our administration and our coaches. And so we just have to keep that in mind. Like, let's just make sure we remember that when we sit down to make decisions with the budget. That's the first thing I want to say. The second thing I want to say is that foundations and learning how to read, we're talking a lot about that foundations data, but we also have to keep in mind that, the whole process of reading is definitely the decoding, and what foundations focuses on is just half of it. And we didn't have an opportunity, or it really isn't the focus today, but to talk about the other part of it, which is the message getting piece. And so all of this foundations work is in service of comprehension. And so I know that it hasn't even been talked about, but it's like behind the curtain is that all that workshop work that is just as important. But foundations being a piece that was, that we felt like might have been a piece that needed to be bolstered. You went ahead and did that. And, it's really great to see this will now parlay into those greater scores in comprehension as well. So I think it's important to talk about those two things.
Can I just build on Kathy's first point and ask a question? As you head into budget season, is there a plan to bring this to the full board?
So
You talk. Oh, yeah.
Oh.
You're not talking to me, right?
we would certainly be willing to do so coming out of committee if that's what the committee was looking to. I mean, I think that there's been some discussion about coaches in the math area at the higher grades. So I think that this doesn't necessarily line up with that, but I think it all connects as Kathy shared. So we're willing to do whatever the committee would like out of that. I would also want to piggyback on something Principal Frost shared. The new students coming in the foundations and how that worked. And so I saw really early on the students that had been here really just pick right up where that had left off. But the teachers did work with new students, and I couldn't tell. And so Becky brought me through. Really, I think we went from K to 3 in her building, and I saw it, and she would point out a new student or two, and they were picking that up pretty quickly. And I was having to ask them, so what does this mean? So it was really impressive. I think the students helped them out as well. So I'm sure it took them a couple days or a week or so, but they did pick up pretty quickly on the language used in it.
I'm also kind of wondering if, some of the problems that we see in the K-1, if that's coming also from the mask usage. It's hard to get all the sounds and the forming of, words if you can't see. And so I guess that's something we have to work around.
Yeah, it's definitely an obstacle. I think, I was having a conversation with someone who was who was working with a student today, and the student was mispronouncing another student's name, and it was a slight difference, but it definitely was a sound distortion, that was going on. But yeah, I'm sure that we can do better with no masks than we do with masks on. But safety is important too, and as soon as it's as soon as we're able to, I think it'll be helpful. I can say that our teachers are trying to take advantage of if they're able to be away from their students enough to take down their masks when they're doing phonemic work, then they're doing that modeling. But that's only where they have 6 feet or more, between them and the students. So that's a challenge.
Does anyone have any other questions regarding the Ccbm fall results? Okay, then we'll move on to the next item on our agenda.
Yeah, so thank you for being here, Becky. As many of you know, Becky has been a passionate leader in the social emotional wellness committee for many, many years. This year was no exception when it came to things that we had to get done in advance of this year. Becky, of course, raised her hand and said that she would lead a subcommittee. So I think I shared with this group that we had applied to the State Department to be in on one of the starting cohorts for a universal screen for social emotional wellness. We were accepted to cohort 2. And actually, we've been anxiously awaiting that kickoff and those trainings. We have the first meeting, I have the first meeting with them on Thursday this week, where we're learning how to set up some of the systems. And then we'll be identifying a training plan going forth. And we're hoping to do our first administration of the assessment in February, at the end of February of this year. That's our time frame. I'll find out whether or not it's realistic when I work with the state a little bit more. But in advance of that work, Becky and the team worked on some documents that we knew that we would need in support of this effort, that we knew that we would want to have at the ready. So nothing was holding us back. So I think I sent everybody those documents in advance. I thought we'd just highlight a couple of them, starting with the SRBI parent guide. So I'm going to share my screen, and Becky, if you want to take over and introduce your team and who you worked with, it's deeply appreciated.
Yes. So when we decided as a district to move forward in applying to be one of these pilot cohorts and administer the DESA Mini this year, I had a team of 13 mental health professionals from across the district, social workers, school psychologists, counselors, health teachers, that got together back in the spring. And then we also worked over the summer. Again, very excited about the potential of what this screener could do for us and for our students, always making sure that we're not letting anybody fall through the cracks and that we're getting really targeted supports in place for students that need them. So over the summer, one of the documents that we created was this SRBI parent guide for social emotional learning. So, when parents are notified that their children will be given this sort of mini assessment, universal screen, we kind of really put our parent hats on and said, what concerns would I have as a parent? What questions would I have? What lingo would I need to understand? And we really tried to start kind of big picture of just right from the beginning. What is social emotional learning? What is it all about? Why are we now screening for it? A little bit about the tool, what it's used for. Again, I won't read all of this to you, but I'm happy to answer any questions you have about it. We explain to parents who is going to be giving the assessment, what we do with the results, where do those results go? What if my student needs help? What if I don't want my child to receive help in the social emotional realm? We try to really think of all the concerns that parents might have across the board. So this is a document that we have drafted. Obviously, we haven't been trained formally in the DESA protocol. So as we go through training at the beginning of the winter, we will be referring back to this document, updating it, editing it, adding, deleting, clarifying, as we learn more about the assessment and how we can best support parents with the information that it will garner for us. Any questions about this document in particular? All right, Gail, do you want to switch then to the next document?
Sure will. Okay, this one is one of the SRBI charts.
So we have a manual for all teachers that really walks them through our SRBI process, our tiered intervention process for ELA and for math. So really what our committee tried to do is now say, well, if I have concerns about reading and math, I kind of know what to do. I know what the tiers are. But now that we're going to be universally screening for social emotional learning and social emotional health, what do those tiers look like? So we tried to mirror the academic tiers as much as possible, knowing full well that it is a bit of a different beast and it's not going to fit quite as neatly in the same box, but really outlining for teachers, what do all students get at the tier 1 level? What will we do for students that flag on the DESA? And what tier 2 and tier 3 supports can we give them? So again, these are specific things that we would do in each K through 8 building to support students with more intense, more frequent interventions in targeted areas of social emotional learning. We also created one for 9-12, just because the high school has some different supports, different services, different programs. So again, we wanted it to be really specific for teachers so that they would know exactly what the next steps would be, again, for students with concerns.
Any questions about any of the documents that we shared and any of the processes that we're putting in place?
I know you haven't had the actual training yet, but I guess one thing I really like the first page that you showed us with the
Parent
possible
guide.
questions. Yeah, I thought it was really comprehensive, and
Thank you.
as a parent, those are exactly what you would think. So that I thought that was spot on. The one question I would have is, if the parent says, okay, I want my child to participate, and then they flag, I guess I would expect there might be a small percentage of parents that might be like, hey, not my kid, my kid's fine. And then how do you proceed from there? And I don't know if you have the answer to that yet, because you haven't done, the training or anything yet. We're just
Yeah.
so far in the beginning, but it just, it came to my mind that, there are a lot of kids that struggle that often the parents are unaware. And the way a child acts in school or in the classroom or in front of the teacher can often be very different from how they are at home.
Sure.
So I'm just wondering, I'm sure
Yeah.
you've come across
And
it before. So
that's a really good question. And I actually just talked about that today of, we don't know what the data is going to look like from this particular screener. So we haven't been able to see it. We don't know what level of flagging we're going to have. We do know, and we haven't been trained, yes, that's all true. But we do know that from one of the introduction videos that we had to this assessment is that parents will have the right to refuse the screening, the administration of the screening. So, we might have concerns about it, a student, but not have that information on that student. But just as we do with all the other data points that we collect, we'll also be looking for patterns that might be appropriate for us to address through curricular, through lessons, through counseling, through some core pieces as well. And we are ramping up for the wellness curriculum to be written. And that's a complicated curriculum because we're really trying to design an approach that would move kids fluidly from learning about physical fitness, learning about healthy bodies, and learning about healthy minds. So just kind of really doing this different kind of approach than has been traditional in schools. So I think it's going to be super challenging curriculum, but worth doing and really important for our students and for our student body. And I think in keeping too with the philosophy that we have as a district about whole child wellness and whole being wellness. So I think there's going to be the ability for us to learn from the assessment and also learn about programming and ways to approach whatever is flagging, and not just individually. I think individual flags, we have a pretty good system that we've had in place of following up, but this is going to give us collective group data as well in a standardized way. I also wonder how much we're going to be able to look at the high school results with the Search Institute survey and see whatever patterns might emerge from that too, to help us in that curriculum work.
well, that was, one of the things I was thinking of is that this is like yet another hat that we're asking our teachers to wear that is really, in my mind, sort of a school psychologist or a social worker. It's kind of like more up their alley. And I know that they're, being included in it, but it just, teachers are trained to teach. They're not really trained to be, a social worker or a school psychologist. So I mean, I like the fact that we're doing it, but I think it is a big ask, to ask the teachers to wear another hat and to be, the first line sort of defense for this social emotional learning. So I just would like to thank our teachers.
Yes. Can I say something about that quickly, Gail?
Yeah.
I think two things. A, our teachers are doing it already. They always have their eyes out for who's not playing with anybody on the playground, who's quiet today, who walked in smiling, who walked in a little teary-eyed. So while yes, this tool will be new, that care and that sentiment is very much already present. And the second point that I want to make is just that this screener is 8 questions long at the K-8 level. So there's only going to be one question about self-awareness. So let's say a child flags on that. Much like if a child flagged just on phoneme segmentation on the Ccbm, we wouldn't automatically put them in intervention. We're not going to automatically give interventions or pull a kid out of class for counseling just because of a flag on the DESA. It's merely just going to say, hey, let's have a conversation about this child. And you're exactly right. Our social worker is going to be sort of our point person for the DESA, for all things DESA, and we'll be leading those conversations. So it's nice to have somebody that, again, to Kathy's point, human resources that can really sort of be our leader and our guru in this area.
Part of our application process was that we had to identify building level teams to look at the data, as well as a district level team. So we have both of those components in place.
And so do we have, with this new implementation, I know it's not going to really ramp up until you guys hopefully start in February, but we have all of the social workers in place. We have, because I remember we hired some new, and just making sure we have the boots on the ground.
I think we have some moving parts in the district. So we have, we're in the process of filling a social work position at the high school. That will probably require us to do another hire within the district for a new social worker. So we're onboarding as well as we can.
Hopefully by the end of next month, certainly with time to get the person on board, be trained and ready to go for February.
The good news is they haven't missed any training on the DESA though. Timing's everything.
I'm guessing all things with the state work very slowly.
Yeah. Yes. We've been waiting. Becky, I don't know. The RFP was supposed to be awarded, I think a year ago, and it didn't get awarded to this group until March, I believe. So yeah, the wheels are slowly turning, but we're ready whenever they turn right.
Does anyone have any other questions regarding the social emotional health screening?
I feel like we're really ahead of the curve on this. This is really perfect timing, but also just really, I'm so glad that we are involved in this. Thank you.
We may have started ahead of the curve, but I think the state is gonna slow us down.
The pack's catching up.
All right, if there are no further questions regarding our first 2 agenda items, then I will open it up to public comment. Wendy, do we have anyone with us?
We do have one person in the audience, but they do not have their hand raised.
Okay. Then I guess we are done. Thank you, everyone, for your presentations. I'm really happy to see that the numbers are looking up, and we'll keep an eye on those younger grades and go forward.
And Diane, full confession, we didn't have a meeting at 6:30, but you did a great job.
That.
I know that. I'm just teasing you. I'm just kidding you. I'm giving you kudos for wrapping it up. So,
Well, I think, the presentations were just, very quick and to the point. And I think, we were prepared with whatever questions we had. So it's good.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Always
And,
nice to be with you guys. Take care.
Thank you,
great.
Becky.
Thank you. Bye.